Hey guys, it's Adam here from adaminsights.com, and I just want to say in this video that film is all about horses for courses. This video specifically, we're going to be looking at the Rollei Blackbird Creative Edition black and white film. This film is just contrast, and more contrast as far as I'm concerned. But first of all, I just want to talk about some of the other films which I use and why I really like them for the type of work I do. And then I'll talk about why I'm kind of in two minds about the Rollei Blackbird. More than any other, I tend to use Ilford FP4 125 black and white film. This film has got a nice balance between contrast, nice chalky shadows, hard to peek the highlights, and beautiful midtones. And 125 ISO, it looks and works really well. I quite like it as a film. It's easy to develop. It's difficult to mess up your images with it. And it's well detailed and scans pretty well at the equivalent of about 15 megapixels. If I want a little bit more detail and way more dynamic range in my black and white shots, I choose the Ilford Pan F50 ISO. This film scans amazingly well at the equivalent of 60 megapixels and is still sharp when I take shots on the Leica. And actually this film represents why I'm still a film shooter more than digital, because there is not a digital option that can give me the dynamic range and the 50 ISO on pure black and white. Sure enough, there's some cameras that can push down or pull down to 50 ISO in RAW, but you have to shoot on color, and then you just lose so much data out of the image when you convert to black and white. And the Leica monochrome black and white can't go down to 50 ISO. So this film just represents something that digital can't do for me, or can't actually do for anyone, and this is why I love it. Ilford Delta 3200 ISO Professional. This just makes the street at night come alive. This is a natural light lover, and if you put a 2.8 lens in front of it, wow, yeah, it just makes street at night come alive. Sometimes I want to shoot colour in natural and available light when the light's failing. So yeah, I choose the Fuji 1600 ISO, or sometimes the 400 Pro H as well. My favourite colour film, because of the dynamic range and the colours, is the Kodak Portra 160. This film scans really well. It's using some of the latest technology. Absolutely pummels color digital as far as I'm concerned, and it's also based on Kodak's motion picture film. If you haven't checked out the movie La La Land, which was shot on 35mm Kodak, I recommend checking it out because it's very indicative of the way that this film behaves, because this film is basically the film that was used in that movie. So, onto the Rollei Blackbird. As I say, it's contrast, and more contrast. One of the things which I quite like about the Ilford 50 and 125 is the dynamic range allows me a lot of room to edit my pictures in post. And I like to keep my shadows open, I like to keep my midtones open, and I don't like to peak my highlights. So then I can actually choose to crush the black, so I can choose to blow out the highlights if I want to. I guess the Rollei film kind of harkens back to a day before we really got into negative scanning and digital editing. This film is really contrasty. There isn't much dynamic range in the film, as you can see. So for my stuff, I'm probably not a fan of it, but that's not to say it's a bad film. If we have a look at some of these shots, I was able to achieve like really rich blacks and blown out highlights so easily just with available light. long exposures seem to create these nice high contrast images, and I was still able to get some motion in there as well. What you're looking at here, none of this I've actually played around the contrast on. So I guess if you are a film purist and you want to take some really nice high contrast images without actually going through an edit phase, the sort of thing that you might have seen in, say, mid 20th century photos or movies where the blacks are pure black. This kind of film noir look, if you like it. If you want to go for that kind of a look, purely out of the film, this is actually a good choice. If you're wanting to get some really nice high contrast landscapes or streetscapes where there's lots of contrasts in the buildings, okay, maybe it's a good choice. If you want dynamic range and detail, nah, I don't think this is a really good choice. If I was doing things like long exposures, where I really wanted to stop the camera down and do things like a 10, 30 second exposure, maybe of some water or these pool balls, then I would choose this film.